I think we're all weirdos. We all have our thing. Tourette and OCD was the least of the like weird things about me, you know?
Welcome to Fem MD, real talk for women who are balancing careers, ambition, and the chaos that comes with it all. Today's guest is Chelsea White. She's an Emmy-nominated TV producer who's worked on hit shows like Watch What Happens Live and The Drew Barrymore Show. I'm excited to talk to Chelsea today for a few reasons. The first is that she lives with Tourette syndrome and speaks nationally about it. It's something that we've all kind of heard about, but don't know a whole lot about. I'm also excited to talk to her about her mentorship with college students and embracing your own weirdness. Can't wait to speak to Chelsea. Let's dive in. Chelsea, thanks so much for being on the show. How's your morning been so far?
It's been really good. I don't know if I should reveal this, but earlier than I usually get up on a Saturday.
Okay.
But I do it for you
We appreciate
because I'm so excited to be here.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm thrilled.
I also felt like I woke up a little earlier, even though I didn't. We had a big dinner for all my employees last night. We stayed out way past our bedtime. I was like texting the babysitter, like, can you stay longer? Can you stay longer? Yeah. So I've learned a lot about you. I'm excited to ask you about a few things today. I want to start from the very beginning with your initial Tourette's symptoms and diagnosis. Take us back to childhood and kind of walk us through kind of your early journey with this diagnosis.
Yeah, absolutely. So my parents first noticed my tics when I was as young as like 2 or 3. There are home videos they have that they would try to set up a camera very inconspicuously so that they could catch my tics so that they could show my doctor to ask if it should be, a concern. So then later finding these home videos was very funny. I'm like, why were you stalking me in our own house? I'm like, what are these weird surveillance videos you guys have of me? But the main ones, the earliest ones where I would squeeze my eyes and my fingers and my toes as hard as I could. And some like eye movements and like some head shaking, I believe also, but mainly it was the squeezing when they first noticed. And when they asked me why I did it, I said, why don't you? You know what I mean? Like I'm 3. I'm like, I don't know. This is just what's happening. So they started to take me to doctors. I grew up outside of Pittsburgh, so very lucky to have a great, lots of medical professionals renowned in that area. So I went to about 3 or 4 doctors who all kind of brushed it off as, maybe something she'll grow out of or nothing to worry about. But I kept showing more tics and like gathering more tics and more symptoms. So they took me to another doctor who did I'm probably going to get the term wrong. Not the EKG, but the EEG. Uh-huh. Is that
the electroencephalogram, all the little stickies on your scalp? Yeah.
All the stickies, and they had me wear it at home overnight. And then they diagnosed me at first with seizures. They said she has a seizure disorder, and that's what's happening. So I was on seizure medication for about 6 months and was getting worse and was not acting like myself. So they finally took me to, at this point, the 5th or 6th doctor who looked at the EEG, said, this was read incorrectly. I'm sorry to tell you, like, this is a misdiagnosis and this child obviously has Tourette. It's like, you just have to find that one doctor, who's kind of familiar in that or has that expertise who just immediately.
Also, props to your parents for like their persistence. I now work in a different realm, but in training, we worked with a pediatric subspecialist, and the one thing he drilled into me was moms always know. Like if a mom brings a kid into the ER and they have concern about something, you need to get your spidey sense up because the moms know. They might not know what it is, but they know that something is off, and it's your job to figure out like what's going on.
100%. But yeah, that was the beginning of it. And then about 2 years later, maybe 4 years later, when I was around 7 or 8, I was then also diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder, which is, a very, very common comorbid as part of the cluster of, neurodivergency disorders, OCD, Tourette, even autism, executive dysfunctions. There's kind of this whole family of neurological disorders that you often, if you have one, you often have one or more of the others. ADHD, which is in the conversation a lot more these days.
Do you remember? So you have pretty vivid memories, like from a very early age.
Yeah.
Do you remember or recall at what point did you feel like you were a little bit different than your friends?
Great question. I do feel, well, here's the thing. Since I exhibited tics and symptoms of Tourette's so young, like I don't remember not having the symptoms. Similarly with my obsessive compulsive disorder, my obsessive thoughts, rumination, also now I have more of the rumination and the worrying. But when I was younger, I even had to physically like complete a task multiple times in a row in order to do it the right way so that something bad didn't happen. And this is the only brain I'd ever known, So on one hand, I think also the fact that I got diagnosed so early and my parents, we were able to contextualize it and we were very open, talking about it at home. But I don't know. I think in that way, I was very fortunate that I don't think I ever felt incredibly insecure or self-conscious about it. I think that all that to say, though, I knew I was different, and I knew that as I started to, go to kindergarten, go to, elementary school, I knew that other kids didn't have the desire to have to like blink their eyes or shake their head or squeeze their fingers or, make noises with their throat or repeat a task a million times. But luckily, I think since it was the only brain I'd ever known, I didn't necessarily feel insecure about it. That being said, I did still feel nervous to talk to my peers about it. Now it's kind of was this complex relationship with it where I knew it wasn't like bad or wrong or, I wasn't like less smart than them or whatever to be living with these disorders, but I didn't like having the conversation with them because the couple of times I did, it just felt like it went off the rails with too many questions and almost like a feeling of judgment from them.
Yeah.
And this is probably just me looking back on it in hindsight. I'm sure I didn't have that feeling at the time, but, in hindsight, it's almost, I see little Chelsea as like, I'm just able to understand these complex neurological disorders and the other 8-year-olds in my class just aren't.
Yeah. I mean, fast forwarding a bit into like your early like childhood development, peer development, I still have like very vivid memories of my first mean girl moment in 5th grade when like all of a sudden these girls started being mean to each other and I was like, what's happening? Like I thought we were all friends. And like I can only imagine like being a young human, being a young woman, being a young male. There's a lot of challenges that come with like puberty and teenagehood, your early 20s. Do you feel like this had a really big impact on like your friendships, your romantic relationships, or was it just something that you were like, nope, this is me and you get all of me?
I think great question. I was also fortunate fortunate is not the right way to categorize it, but my experience with Tourette was that I had kind of a moderate case to where I could, to the like most of the time, suppress it or control it until I would, if I really felt like I needed to let my tics out, I would, kind of suppress it while I was in class and then, find a time to excuse myself to go to the bathroom. Similarly, if I was with friends, just kind of when they're in the other room or, hey, I'm going to go get something to drink, whatever it is. And then you kind of let the tics out and then you come back and you're okay for a little bit. So I was in a position where I could conceal it, I guess, to some extent, right? So to that end, I don't think that it had a huge impact on my friendships or, romantic life. That was just all a case of me being a big nerd. That had nothing to do with my Tourette or my OCD. So that wasn't happening either way in high school. But
okay, so speaking of like weirdness and nerd energy, I was looking on your website, embracing your weirdness. Let's kind of speed up to like today and kind of your message to a lot of young adults. I think going to medical school, I also have a bit of a nerd in me.
Yes.
I don't know, like as you've gotten older, has it become easier to embrace your weirdness?
100%. I mean, and again, I'd like to say I was better at embracing it when I was young than probably in hindsight. I maybe thought I was a little bit better at it than in reality I really was, because you still kind of want to like, you're 16, you're like, I want to kind of fit in. But now 100%, I think we're all weirdos. We all have our thing, right? So Tourette or OCD is just mine, and not even the only, like one of mine, right? Like I was treasure of show choir in high school. I was, like to joke, and like I played xylophone in the marching band. So like Tourette and OCD was the least of the like weird things about me.
Yeah.
But so yeah, absolutely. I think now, and the message that I like to speak about when I do meet other people with Tourette or have a speaking engagement is just as I think kids are more aware these days with social media. I really think that, you can say what you will, the pros and cons of social media, but I think the one good thing about it is I think now kids are so much more connected. They can connect with like-minded people and people going through similar experiences with them than you or I would have had the opportunity to when we were younger. So for me to say, embrace your weirdness, and we're all kind of dealing with something that we feel maybe insecure about or whatever. Hopefully, I do think young people feel that more instinctually now, which is fantastic to see because they're able to be exposed to so many different, other people and thoughts and viewpoints and cultures that it really seems like they're in a much, better place with embracing themselves as they are.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I feel like social media, the way I look at it is it like opened the door and I didn't feel like the world was so small in a very positive way. Like for me, even business growth wise, I've harnessed these great relationships with people I've never actually physically met. But when I was like building my practice and doing all these hard things, I would just kind of reach out to these other people who'd done it and say, hey, how do I do this? How do I do
Yeah,
that? And
exactly.
so it provides a network, whether it's personal or professional, that you wouldn't have otherwise known.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, hopefully, I love meeting other young people and adults my age, of all ages, with Tourette and OCD. It's so interesting to it's almost like meeting a twin. You realize that things you were thinking and feeling uh, your whole life were maybe not as much part of your unique personality as they are traits of this common neurodivergency that we both share. So yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like the term like neurodivergence in this cluster of kind of diagnoses is becoming much more common as we learn more about them. People talk more about them. It's not necessarily a label anymore or a negative thing, it's just a descriptor.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Let's transition a little bit to your career, which I'm so excited to talk to you about. I've been a big
Yeah.
Bravo fan for a long time.
Yes.
Okay. So Emmy nominated, you've worked on shows like Watch What Happens Live. You've done the Drew Barrymore show. How did you first break into the entertainment industry?
So growing up, I was always fascinated with TV, especially live television. I loved like Conan O'Brien was one of my heroes. I mean, who doesn't look to Conan O'Brien as a hero? But I really just loved pop culture. I loved a moment, an unexpected moment, which often happened on talk shows or award shows or live shows in general. So when I started to kind of think seriously about, is this something I could really do with my life? I knew that New York City was where I wanted to be. I was lucky enough to sort of trick this fellowship program to pick me to be one of their 30 fellows in 2005, 20 years ago. This is my 20th year in New York City and in the TV industry.
Okay, let's pause for 1 second. Why do you say you tricked them? Is this like some self-doubt here?
I think I like to think of it as just some like healthy humility and,
Okay.
And just
I like it.
an awareness that, look, you can be as talented as anyone, you can work as hard as anyone, be as prepared as anyone, but you're never going to, we're never going to be able to exclude the serendipity factor, the right place, right time factor, you know? So I think that's kind of what I mean when I say things like that. It
Okay.
just, I think I had as much, you know, to offer as anybody, but it just so happened that, you know,
You got in.
I got in amidst, you know, the other hundreds or thousands or however many people applied. You know, the person doing the choosing just happened to, you know, gravitate towards something I said in one of my essays. But so I got an internship at HBO in their documentary film department, which was
Okay.
very cool. But I finally was brave enough to tell my supervisor that my real dream was to work in live TV or like a talk show, which I always tell young people when I speak to them or when I'm mentoring, always articulate what your actual dream or goal is. I think that took me a while to realize because I was always nervous about saying the wrong thing, which seems so silly in hindsight, you know, but I was like, I don't want to tell my supervisor at HBO documentary that really my dream is to do this other thing. I don't want them to think I'm ungrateful or, you know, someone else could have taken this spot. Chelsea, what are you doing here? You know, you imagine the big dramatic all the worst case scenarios that could happen, which is also my OCD. But so she right away, as you know, any person would be, you know, because everybody, you know, your internship supervisors, et cetera, want to help, you know, want to get you to the place where you want to be. So she said, well, I know one of the producers at Total Request Live, which hopefully some people listening and watching will remember. That was an iconic show on
TRL.
MTV, TRL, yep, live every day with Carson Daly, and then later Damien Fahey and Vanessa Lachey, née Manillo. And so that show started in 1998 when I was 16. So I grew up watching it through, you know, high school and college. And so to think that there was even an opportunity that I could actually work on this show that I grew up, you know, it was one of the shows that inspired me to get into television, created some of the most, you know, most iconic pop culture moments of our generation. So long story already long. I landed the interview again, very just serendipitously, right place, right time, because one of their production assistants, just like that same week that she passed my resume along, one of their production assistants decided to take another job. And so they just happened to have an opening, which they didn't often. And then they just happened to see something in, me, the weird girl who is treasurer of show choir and whatever. So that was sort of what started it all for me. And from there, all of, you know, those producers and writers and everybody, when that show ended, went somewhere else, and you just kind of build your network from there. And so actually one of my producers on TRL, she went on to be, still to this day, is the showrunner of Watch What Happens Live. And so a few years down the road, she called me up. I was working somewhere else, and she said, you still want to kind of get back to like the talk show world, right? And I was working at a production company at that time that did like marketing and branding videos. Mm-hmm. And I said, yeah, absolutely. She's like, okay, well, I'm doing this new show at Bravo. It's hosted by one of our executives, Andy Cohen, because you know at that time he was an executive. He wasn't a television personality. Like, do you want to come? So do your regular job. And then every Thursday at that time, when it first launched, they were live every Thursday at midnight. And they filmed it in like literally like a conference room that they had turned into a studio at, at Bravo HQ. And she said, as soon as you're done with your job, 5 or 6, whatever, come over and you'll work with us from like 6 to 1 in the morning and just be kind of like an extra set of hands, like an extra segment producer, talent liaison. And that's exactly what I did. So for that first year of the show, that every once a week I would go over and I would stand in during rehearsal with Andy. So I would like pretend to be one of the guests during a read through. And then I got to go and be one of the 3 people, like the showrunner, the writer, Andy, and me. And we would have a little meeting about how I felt about the script, and I would help the writer, like make changes if needed. And then I'd welcome in the guests and kind of like brief them and make sure that they felt okay what they were doing. And yeah, it was really cool. So I also always want to preface or contextualize that I was by no means, they had an amazing head writer and segment producers that were working throughout the week. And I was sort of like a night of day player to just, be there and make sure that everyone knew that She by Sheree was coming out with joggers.
And I love that the stars aligned and like you were able to break into the area that you had passion for. I
Yes.
think sometimes people ask me like how I got into my field, which is very niche. And I often have the same answer. I'm like, it was very serendipitous. I was at the right place. I met the right people who influenced me. When you think about writing and some of your like creativity with the shows, does that all come from within or do you have to do like research? I mean, how do you, I don't even know what goes into producing like a live show.
So I think definitely in terms of its being, if it's creativity surrounded or by creativity for a guest, right? For sure, there's a lot of research that goes into it because you want to understand, like, is there sort of a funny, interesting, deep cut that we can play off of, and say, well, I know that when you were 12 years old, baked blueberry muffins for your English teacher. I don't know. That would be weird. I hope no one did that. But, that for sure, there's a lot of research that goes into it. But then from there, I think for me, again, like I'm such a student of like just pop culture in general. And I think back to the moments that stuck with me watching Conan or Letterman or the VMAs, in the 90s. And I personally like to go for those sorts of fun, big, silly moments. So my favorite thing, and something I think I really did learn from the two writers on TRL back in the day, who are still good friends of mine, they kind of taught me the art of come up with a silly name for the segment or the game that will get a laugh just by virtue of what the name is, and then back into what that could possibly be. You know what I mean? So, oh my gosh, I should have come with examples now that I'm teeing this up. But
I'm so glad that you did tee it up because we have a little game.
Oh my God, yay.
Okay. So I hope you're ready to play Plead the Fifth.
Oh, I'm so ready. Let's go.
Okay, I'm going to ask you 3 questions.
Okay.
You can plead the fifth on one.
Okay, great.
Who is the biggest diva that you've ever worked with? It could be interviewee or interviewer.
Just because we're talking about the 90s and 2000s, and this is like fun, but also, I don't think that she's going to find me on social media and dox me. When I worked on this VH1 show called Big Morning Buzz Live, which I think like 5 people in the whole world ever watched, including my husband, weirdly. I'm like, how did you discover this show before knowing me? You just watched it on purpose? But we got pre-interviews with the guests, and I was going to be producing Tara Reid. So I had a scheduled phone time with her. We had to keep, like, she kept not being on the phone. We kept waiting for her. Finally, when she got on, she yelled at me. She was like yelling and talking about how, like, I mean, she clearly didn't want to be on the call. She clearly didn't want to be like having anything to do with talking to me. And then though, when she got to the show, she said, I'm sorry, and that she was very sick and not feeling like herself. So I said, okay, Tara Reid, we brought it back around. But yes, I was really scarred in that moment of Tara Reid, one of the most iconic 90s, 2000 it girls, screaming at me on the phone when all I wanted to do was ask her what it was like, maybe or maybe not, dating JC Chazet.
Like, screaming at a stranger is never okay. But I will say we all have good days and bad days.
That's what I'm saying.
I tell my kids it's okay to be mad, but you can't be mean.
Yes, exactly. I wish I would have had those words for Tara Reid in that moment. But yes, and I mean, there's probably a handful of those silly ones where, someone's just like screaming at you and then you just have to live with it that maybe that person isn't, who you thought they were.
Yeah. Also good of her to apologize. That's some good.
It was very big of her to apologize.
Self-insight. Okay. Next question. Who is your single favorite housewife?
Oh, it's okay. It's gotta be, here's the thing. I'm going to be biased. I would say
we love biases here.
Well, I think that though people might be shocked. I'm going to say Dorinda because
Okay.
she was kind enough when I hosted, I'm bringing it back around to self-promotion. When I hosted a show that I created with one of my longtime collaborators, we created this show called Adulting by Bravo. That was
Yep.
a Bravo digital show for a while. And Dorinda was our first guest. And she could not have been lovelier. So any of the housewives or Bravo celebrities who were kind enough to do our little digital show, I have to give them the props by upholding them as a favorite. Also, who doesn't love I Made It Nice? I mean, she is some iconic, from an iconic moment perspective. Is this a
Yeah.
controversial answer, Lauren? Well, who would you say?
Oh, Bethany Frankel.
Well, okay. Yeah. And she's killing it on TikTok right now.
Boss, entrepreneur, energy. I love that she's authentically her. She doesn't filter herself. But yeah, Dorinda is a wild card. I'm kind of surprised that
it's
you
out
said
there.
that.
I know. Don't at me. Bravo fans, don't at me.
Okay, last question on Plead the Fifth.
Yes.
What has been your single favorite interview to watch?
Yeah, I'm trying to automatically think back to some of the classic, like someone on Conan or Letterman. Oh my gosh, Lauren. Okay, here we go. This is the one. The VMAs, I want to say it could have been like 97, maybe 98, somewhere in the mid 90s. So is Madonna doing an interview? I'm going to look after and then be really mad if this isn't right. I'm almost sure it was Kurt Loder. If it wasn't Kurt, it was John Norris, but it was Madonna and an MTV News person. And then all of a sudden something goes flying over Madonna's head. And they look over on the elevated platform that they're on, and it's Courtney Love. And Courtney Love has thrown her compact at Madonna to try to just like steer attention and put herself in the center of the action. And so then Courtney comes up and crashes the interview, and you can tell Madonna is like, what is happening? And then, Courtney's a little bit incoherent. That is one of the top three, I'd say, iconic 90s, 2000s interview moment. If you guys haven't watched it, look it up or stop what you're doing. Pause this podcast, return to it. Don't leave the podcast. Pause it. Google Madonna, Courtney Love VMAs. That's a classic.
Yeah, that's an order right now. Okay, well, thank you for playing our little game.
Thank you.
So let's go back a little bit to your beyond producing your speaking engagements with younger adults. What are some of the big messages that you want to leave them with?
The number one, and the reason I felt, moved to start speaking and mentoring, especially to like college age and young adults, is to make sure that they understand that they're as worthy of anybody to go after their dreams and receive the things that they dream of. Going back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier, I think it is great to have like a healthy sense of humility and self-awareness, and just understanding that the road to achieving your dreams will include many factors, talent being one of several, including serendipity and, right place, right time, as we talked about. But something that I felt growing up was it wasn't that I didn't think I was worthy or good enough, but I think I just had a real existential idea from a young age of how many people are going after the same opportunities, if that makes sense, or that factors like, just geography, right? If you just happen to live closer to New York City or LA or whatever it is, you're going to at least have that one more piece of the puzzle than other people. And me just being in this really small town in Pennsylvania, it all felt very out of reach. And so what I really love to, talk to students and young adults about is that you shouldn't count yourself out just simply because it feels like a larger than life idea. Those are the best ideas, and to just take the small steps and put one foot in front of the other and go for it.
Yeah. It makes me think back to this quote that was written on the wall in our middle school. And it said shoot for the stars. And even if you, or shoot for the moon, here I am screwing it up. Shoot for the moon. Even if you miss, you land among the stars.
Yes.
And I always remembered that of like, have these like insanely huge dreams. You may never quite get there.
Yeah.
But if you're like working towards something really hard, you're going to achieve something that is really great.
100%. And just feeling, I think, especially for, anyone who would consider themselves sort of maybe like a type A or overachiever, I think you can get really lost in the sauce through, high school and college, about taking the right classes.
Yes.
Or do I have the right activities? Am I doing everything the correct, exact right way? Am I going to have the right things on my resume?
Mm-hmm.
And, keeping in perspective that, yes, of course, to some extent, there's going to be certain, qualifications that people are looking for. But really, at the end of the day, there's so many more factors that go into it, and not to get too lost in the sauce of following one specific path. That just, there's many paths. And often even it's the times that you feel that you've taken a wrong turn or veered off the path that it turns out that was the path that you need to be going down. And it can feel frustrating that that you don't have total control over it. But once you kind of give in to that, you don't have control, and you just start listening to your gut and doing the things that feel right, that's really when you'll end up where you're supposed to be.
Yeah, our intuition is definitely a huge part of success. I feel like, in my opinion, is going with your gut. I also think that, like, in the academic medical world, a lot of us, exactly like you were saying, we get lost in the sauce. We're so type A. It's like undergrad, bam, med school, bam, residency, bam, fellowship, bam.
Yeah.
And so you get all this like external academic validation, which fills our cup up because we're high achievers. And then once you're kind of done with your training and you're out on your own and you're ready to like start your own career and form who you are as a physician and how you take care of patients, I feel like a lot of us get kind of lost, and we're like, wait. I need someone to tell me what to do, because someone's told me what to do for the last 32 years of my life.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Give us an example of one time where you took a turn on a path that you didn't anticipate and it ended up leading you somewhere very sweet.
Well, there's a couple that come to mind. One would be after I did the fellowship program that I did the summer after I graduated.
With HBO?
With HBO, yep.
Yeah.
And also I should shout out for anyone listening who's interested or is a student or has a student in their life. The fellowship program was through the International Radio and Television Society, IRTS. They're a nonprofit that fosters community amongst media professionals in New York City. And every year they have this amazing fellowship program where we each have individual internships. So mine was HBO. And so after I was finishing up for the summer, my plan was I'm going to apply to be an NBC page. And I felt so empowered that I had gotten into the fellowship program. I thought nothing can stop me now. I'm going to be a page. I'm going to meet Conan O'Brien. I'm going to become his head writer, or I'm going to work on SNL. That was my absolute dream. And I made it to the very, very, very final round of all the rigorous rounds. And I didn't get it. And when I emailed them to say, thank you for the opportunity, and is there any way I could improve if I apply in the future? Their answer made my brain explode, because it was, no, nothing in particular. You didn't do anything wrong. Just some people stood out more, and you did not stand out. You made it really far, but yeah, the answer was just sort of like, it just is what it is. And I was like, wait, there's no exact right steps I can take to, make it right next time. So I was very, very depressed that I was not accepted in the NBC page program. But then, less than a few weeks later, it was when I got the call that there was an opening at TRL. And so if I had done the page program, I would have been tied up and not available for the opportunity, which I think was ultimately the right step for me. Also, when I was working at, maybe this is kind of in that vein too, actually. When I, before the Drew Barrymore show existed, was freelancing around, and I decided I kind of wasn't going to work for the summer, which was not smart. I had a lot of credit card debt that summer, but I was like, I have this like family vacation I'm taking with my extended family. It was such a big deal because we don't see extended family all the time as we get older. And that was kind of getting in the way of me having a longer term gig. And I just had my sights set that I'm going to do that and just spend time with friends and family this summer, rack up that credit card debt, and then get back into it. But so one of my good friends calls me and she said, I'm doing this talk show pilot. I want you and our other close friend to interview with the showrunner to be the two writers for the pilot. Now I'm doing like Chelsea Summer. I don't want to do this. Please, please. She's calling me, begging me. The showrunner's emailing me like, we want you to interview for this. I'm like, everybody leave me alone. This is the summer of credit card debt. Finally, I said, okay. The timeline pushed a little bit, and I said, okay, let me see what this is all about. There was no host attached at that time. It was just sort of this vague, we're developing a talk show. We have a few hosts in play. And once I signed on, that's what then became Drew Barrymore was the host that signed on. And that opportunity allowed me to join the Writers Guild and, led to other cool connections and, experiences. So that's a little left of that, but still kind of in that vein, where I felt like being pulled another direction, and that this opportunity, for whatever reason, you talk about following your gut, and in that way, for some reason, my gut was telling me that opportunity wasn't right for me. But then as soon as the circumstances shifted and the timeline shifted, it suddenly felt like, I felt pulled to it. And thank goodness that I was,
Yeah, that you articulated that so well, because I feel that a lot with like growing my own business. Sometimes I feel like I have to be the bull in the china shop and just charge forward and break as much glass as I can to get stuff done. And then other times I feel like I do have to like step back, and I picture myself, this is probably weird, but being like a piece of seaweed, just kind of like going with the ocean,
Yes.
and being like this like passive thing. Whereas other times I have to be like super active and aggressive. I don't know. It's hard to do
exactly
both.
Right.
Yeah.
You're exactly right. And it's hard to know when to do both. And but I love your seaweed analogy, because that's even what I often give that advice too, of sometimes you do have to just let the journey like take you, like you just have to like let, the life like pull you, and sometimes, yeah, it ends up pulling you in the right direction. So you just really never know what situation is going to lead to the other. And what I often also tell people is, especially people who are in, not just the entertainment industry. I mean, it really is applicable to most any decision you have to make, but especially I do this a lot as a freelancer who often is faced with forks in the road of like, maybe this short-term opportunity versus this longer one, but versus this money, but versus, this type of entertainment. Just picture yourself saying yes and saying no, fully visualize yourself in the moment of like giving each of those answers. And I think your gut usually tells you, what I mean? Like your gut also, you kind of will get a feeling, and you're not going to know if it was the right answer or not, but.
Yeah, I love that. Well, what's on the horizon? What are you looking forward to over the next year?
Over the next year, I am really looking forward to, hopefully not to take it into a bummer of a place, but I'm hoping that things in the world as a whole are kind of weird right now. I don't know if anyone's noticed, but also especially still in my industry, in the TV industry, things are still a little shook up, with lots of mergers and AI creeping up on us. But I actually really feel hopeful that things are going to kind of settle into a new normal, so to speak. And I see lots of my friends having really exciting opportunities and, working on developing new things. So I am excited to see like what happens in how the TV and digital industry continue to take shape in new ways. I'm also just really excited to see what my husband does. He's a musician and he's putting out a new album and going to be touring and stuff. And, lately sitting here, having the opportunity to talk with you and talk about some of the, fun things I've got to do in my life. I think I'm also now kind of moving into an era where talking about being the seaweed or being the bull in the china shop, I'm enjoying being, a little bit slower sometimes, and saying no to things and saying yes to sleeping in with our two cats and, hanging out watching a Dateline episode. So I'm looking forward to more of that.
Okay, Chelsea, I'm curious. There's all these different opportunities. You talk about as a freelancer, we've multiple opportunities present themselves. There's lots of personalities in the entertainment world. Did you ever come across a situation where you felt like there was a little, I don't know if toxic is the right word, but bad energy, bad vibes, and you ultimately said no to it?
Oh my God. I mean, probably more than I could even have time to tell on your podcast. I'm trying to think of one that would that might be a little bit overdramatic, but no, you certainly run into all sorts of unsavory energy, I guess would maybe be the right way to put it, in the, not only behind the scenes working as a writer producer, but also in my time. I used to do stand up and like hosting. And so both behind and in front of the camera, there's also been all sorts of interesting situations. I'm trying to give you think of a very specific example, but I mean, certainly in general, I would say one of just a dime a dozen toxic situation is just people wanting others to work for close to free while they are getting paid, right? I mean, I feel like that's something we probably all encountered, especially 100%, like as, maybe more of like when I was in my entry level phase behind the, writing and producing, just being faced with extremely lowball offers. But though, especially as, in front of the camera, hosting different things. Again, I'm trying to give you an actually specific example, but so many times
like,
where
they would label it as almost like an internship and like, you don't deserve a big paycheck because it's the opportunity and the resume building. Okay.
Yes. And where everyone else involved is making money, but they assume, I think especially it's a trap that, many are led into when they're trying to be on camera. It's an extremely common scenario where as I think, now this has just been such a common thing that I see on social media, people saying like, exposure is not paying my rent at the end of the day though, right? I mean, you should balance. And I think there is certainly something to be said for the right opportunity to put yourself in the right situations, to meet people, to network, to get exposure is not a thing, right? But I think you have to draw the line. And also, I'm even trying to think of some scenarios like when maybe I won't name names, but some shows that I've worked on in the past, I've had, I once had this showrunner who was always trying to pressure us to do really mean-spirited gotchas on our guests. And I mean, maybe just so that also no one conflates it with another show. This was a show in like the 2000s, like 2010s, that was on VH1. That won't be a secret, but it's fine. And there was a period of time when we had a showrunner who had kind of wanted us to do these gotcha things. And I had to, fall out of his good graces, I guess, so to speak, by saying, no way in hell are we going to do that. After, though, giving in and kind of going along with it, a couple of times, because I'm thinking, well, this is the boss. Like, how can I say no? And then, so I think those are very real situations that in the entertainment industry, I'm sure anyone listening would, we'd probably be shocked how many people have a similar experience where you have to, sometimes it's not always rewarded to lean into your own integrity, right, in the entertainment industry. And so I think that can be, as a crippling people pleaser, Libra sun, Pisces, rising, Cancer moon. I like to say that just because it sounds like I know what it means. I don't fully. But I'm sure it's not, the only industry. I'm not sure if you've ever faced something like that, Lauren, or like in
Yeah, I mean, the medical training in and of itself is a world that most people have no clue about. I mean, one glimpse into like reality TV, I did watch a documentary about the Jerry Springer show, and that was really eye-opening to me in terms of like unsavory behavior and trying to like I remember them talking about they would like fly these people out to the show,
Oh yeah.
put them in a situation that basically destroyed their like social life, and then they wouldn't even pay for them to fly home. Like they'd be like
It's
stuck there.
wild. And
Yeah.
that's why, I mean, I have, even though I consume it voraciously, but I have never worked in reality TV, and because I don't think I have the, thick enough skin, or I'm too much of a people pleaser, to do and you hate to label it. And this is no shade to any, I have plenty of friends who work in the reality sphere in different ways, who I know are have integrity and, great at their job and aren't using these types of tactics. But I just think it's so hard to not, part of your job as a reality producer, to some extent, even if it's very like innocently, you are still manipulating them to some extent, right? Because you want them to give you, the storyline or the content that you want. So I think it's tricky, man. But that's why I think at the end of the day, the real advice is we just all have to find a way to be independently wealthy and just not deal with any of it. I'm still working on that, Lauren. So let me
Aren't
know
we all?
if you have
Aren't
any
we all?
thoughts.
I'm gonna take a page from your book. I just actually bought a book called Essentialism, and it's all about how to say no.
Yes. Sometimes we have to say no.
Yeah, in order to have fun and do the things that we love.
Absolutely.
Well, Chelsea, this has been so much fun. Where can the audience find more of you?
They can find me at my website, and my social handles are all the Chelsea White. And not because I'm a self-centered a-hole. It's because somebody already had Chelsea White.
Stop
so
it,
I
Chelsea.
had to
Own
add
it. The
Okay,
Chelsea White.
I am
Own
the
it.
one. Look at me. Capital T, capital C, capital W. Yes. So thatchelseawhite.com, and on Instagram and TikTok. Follow me on TikTok because I have not posted yet, which is probably part of the problem. But I'm in my mind, my next goal, here's something I'm looking forward to. I want to start posting and get enough followers to go live. And then I might start doing like a TikTok talk show or something fun. But you have to have a certain amount of followers. So there you go. That's a goal.
I love it. Well, thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Lauren.
This show is brought to you by the Hippocratic Collective. Check out our shows and content at hippocratic-collective.com.